Thanks for having me. So my name's Coach Phil Edworthy. I've been coaching football for almost 20 years now, pretty much right when I graduated high school. I got asked by my old high school coach if I wanted to come and help out with the program. They wanted a couple extra coaches. So, 18, 19-year-old kid just loved the sport and went to a university that didn't have football. So, I decided to come back and help out, and kind of took off from there. So I started coaching high school football, and then one of the guys that I played with started coaching for the Cambridge Lions, and he messaged me and asked me if I would come help him. So got involved with the minor football there after 8 years, and then moved up to the university level 6 years ago, which is also the same year that we started MVP. Pretty much it started myself and my partner Sean. We were looking for kind of a different way that we could coach kids and develop kids that wasn't necessarily coaching at the tackle football level. So we noticed there wasn't really a lot of people running skills camps in Waterloo region. So we thought that was an area that maybe we could start. So we kind of figured out, okay, this is what we want to do. Talked to a couple of guys that I had coached previously that had moved on to the CFL and see if they would be interested in helping their time. And then there was a group in Mississauga called IDFFL that I'd kind of seen some stuff that they were doing with 7-on-7. And Coach Younger and kind of just asked them kind of more of what it was, and we ended up going and sitting down and having lunch, and they kind of explained what it was and what they were doing, and they wanted to start a league in the winter. So we decided that's something we wanted to add to our program. So we got a bunch of the high school kids in Waterloo region together for a tryout, and then that was kind of where 7-on-7 went for us. So we ended up with only 10 kids to start, and so we competed in the winter league. So every other week we would go down, we'd play some games and then do some skill work with the kids. And I could see the benefits and the kids getting better week after week. And then in the States, 7-on-7 for the last 12, 13 years has really grown into kind of the biggest thing going in the winter and spring. So we partnered with the IDFFL guys, and they took a couple of our guys to go compete in a tournament against U.S. teams. So I went to the tournament along with a few of our players, and that was kind of the point for me where I saw like this is a huge opportunity for our kids to compete against the best kids, but also how beneficial it could be for them. So out of that, I just kind of decided, me and Sean just said next year we're going to take our show on the road, and we're going to try and expand and travel to the States. And since 2017 we've been taking teams to tournaments in the States. Obviously this year we didn't really get to do that, which was disappointing, but just to see the benefits of the players and exposure to US colleges, competition against players that are the 4 and 5 star kids that are going to Alabama and Georgia. If you line up against them and you can have some success, it gives you, confidence that you can compete at a high level too. And when our kids come back and, go to their high school teams, go to their club teams, they're better prepared for the next season. I think one of the biggest points for me too was, because there's no equipment, it's non-contact from a safety perspective. The concussions kind of became a big issue when we were first starting. So, some parents may not want their kids to be involved with contact football at a younger age, where I think 7-on-7 has a big avenue to get kids into football right away and kind of use it as a development tool there. But, the physical toll that it takes on the kids' bodies to play so many games of football, we just saw it as a different avenue for them to still compete and still get better and work on their skills, but not necessarily beating up their bodies constantly, especially after just finishing a high school season in November. And then if they're going to play summer football in the summer, we kind of wanted to bridge the gap a little bit. So it's been going ever since. And we have kids now from Quebec all the way to Windsor and everywhere in between is part of our program. So, what we've been doing is kind of taken off, and we're just excited about, that mode of football.
Yeah, and I think I've been fortunate enough to coach some of the same kids that have been a part of your program, whether it's at Laurier or with the Cambridge Lions. We've had a lot of successful guys that have really benefited from that experience. So I haven't gotten to see it firsthand and been actually involved in it, or even I've never seen a 7-on-7 football game live myself. But I've certainly the testimonials from the players and the evidence that I've seen, right, just in players' growth from maybe as a sophomore to a senior. That 7-on-7 experience has been invaluable for them. And, even beyond, like, obviously there's the whole, I think for me, I think about it in two pieces. There's the whole like world of 7-on-7 in the States, which is huge in recruiting. And obviously as a Canadian player who might be playing high school in Canada, you trying to get to camps and get to 7-on-7 tournaments can be really beneficial in terms of, garnering attention, from American eyes, but even just as a pure development tool, like to me, you bring up the concussion thing. I think that's incredibly relevant. Just the pace of reps. One of the things I heard from a parent of one of the players who played with you for, I think, 1 year, was just you go to these tournaments and the number of reps that you get, competitive, meaningful, strategic reps. It's not like camps are great too, but in camps, it's not like you learn a playbook and then you go apply the playbook and you're playing like 200 snaps or whatever. Right. Whereas in a 7-on-7 situation, like if you play 3 or 4 games, right, you might, end up playing a ton of snaps in one day. And to have that efficiency, right? Like football is such a practice-based game. Our practice to performance ratio is crazy. And so to be able to get that many meaningful reps without putting that wear and tear on your body, I think it makes it a really meaningful opportunity for whether it's Canadian high school or just, like programs like yourselves in more places. And I know that's certainly becoming much more common, in the last couple of years on this side of the border. So I think for coaches who are looking for something they can take to their program, to me, it checks off all the boxes, especially at the high school level, right? Because you're trying to minimize equipment, you're trying to maximize safety, trying to minimize the number of coaches you need, right? Like that's one of the challenges with coaching is, if you have 3 super dedicated coaches on a basketball team, you're the best coach basketball team in the region, right? But if you have 3 super dedicated football coaches, all those guys are working, 1,000 miles an hour just to try and get all the jobs done that you need on a football staff, right? So to be able to take that and break it into, 7-on-7 where the numbers are a little more manageable, and obviously without having linemen, there's just less positions to coach and develop. So I think it's a super useful tool and something that I think, and I think obviously you believe in running the program, is going to continue to grow on this side of the border. If you were, and I mean, you've been in the situation, so you're in a good situation to get advice on it. If you were a high school coach watching this going, okay, I buy it, I like it, it's a chance for us to get more meaningful reps. How would you go about, if you're at a high school, like using 7-on-7, like as a development tool?
Well, I think the big thing is for the high schools, there's a couple, benefits of using it. Like you touched on, you don't need as many bodies. You don't need as many coaches. So you're there and you can essentially have one offensive coach and one defensive coach. And you can run through your whole playbook, right? I think most schools probably have some variation of pass skelly worked into their practice plan, which is essentially, you take out the lineman and you're not running it. It's only pass plays, which is essentially what 7-on-7 is. So it allows you to get a lot of reps for your quarterback and your receivers and really work on your timing from an offensive perspective. And not, you can focus strictly on your pass game, strictly on your quarterback's reads, and, building that kind of, connection with your receivers. And from a defensive perspective, you can't control what the other team on offense does. So, for example, if you're playing a team that runs the ball 80% of the time, your DBs are getting very little reps as far as their coverage skills. And it doesn't benefit them that much, where 7-on-7, where it's all passing, your DBs get a lot of coverage reps. You can, mix in zone coverage, man coverage, and really get them all of those, work the full toolbox that they need to, not just focusing on one aspect of the game. And like you touched on, you get a lot of reps. You know, you run a play, you take the ball back. You run another play, you take the ball back. And, you know, in the 7-on-7 game play, it's a 25-minute run clock. So that's how it's kind of structured when you go to these tournaments. So everything happens fast. Like the quarterback has 4 seconds to throw the ball or it's a sack, and then you lose it down and it's on to the next play. So like you touched on, you know, we've been fortunate to have success at most of our tournaments where sometimes on a weekend we're playing 8 or 9 games if we make it to the semifinals or the finals. So our kids are getting hundreds of quality reps. Like you said, the quarterbacks, you know, it really works on their ability to read the defense and make decisions. And some people say it's not realistic because you don't have a pass rush, which is true. But at the same time, if the quarterbacks get to work on that and understand what they're seeing, you know, in that format, they're going to be better when you get a pass rush in front of them, when you have the O-lineman in front of them, because they're so used to making that read already once they see what the defense is doing. You know, I think especially for quarterbacks, it's probably the best way for them to develop from a younger age all the way up. You know, coaching, you know, I've helped out with Pee Wee and Bantam before. And, you know, it's easy at that age if you have a stud running back that you just literally run the ball every play and your quarterback doesn't get developed. Your receivers don't get developed. Your defensive backs don't get developed because all they're doing is shedding blocks and making tackles. So incorporating, you know, 7-on-7 from that age all the way through, there's benefits, you know, kind of at every age group. And I think the biggest thing too from high school is, you know, you can run that whenever you want. Like you can even just block it off in a half hour. You could go on the field at lunchtime with just your skill position guys and, you know, for 20 minutes, get some extra practice in that you wouldn't get, and it doesn't take away from your initial practice time. And a lot of schools or teams are starting to do that more in the springtime, which I think is an ideal time where, you know, you're not focused on game planning. You're not focused on, you know, your league play and all of that. You're just focusing on development. So, you know, once a week, twice a week, you can go out on the field for an hour with your guys and just run, you know, 7-on-7, and you don't need, you know, more than a couple coaches. So if you don't have a line coach, you know, sorry for the linemen, but like the linemen don't need to go out there and do 7-on-7, but you can get all your skill guys. So I think it allows you to do a lot with a little. And I know being a high school coach for the last 17 years, I've been at, you know, teams, we've had a lot of coaches for every position. And, you know, one year I was the head coach and I had 2 guys with me, and, you know, we had to do everything essentially as a whole offensive unit, as a whole defensive unit, because we don't have bodies. So you don't get as much time to spend with your skill guys, where, you know, in 7-on-7, you can, you know, just take one offensive coordinator, one defensive coordinator, and, you know, run as many plays as you want. And I think, you know, one of the things that we've talked about, you know, from a national level, like we formed a 7-on-7 Association of Canada, myself and some coaches on the West Coast. So there's Game Ready Elite in BC, and then there's Recruit Ready in Winnipeg, big time players in Calgary. Then there's Next Level in Nova Scotia, and, you know, we're up to 10 clubs from across the country, is talking about how we can use the sport through 7-on-7, but also, you know, incorporate all levels. And one of the things that we kind of, you know, talked about doing, providing a platform, you know, high school teams run a tournament. And if your high school wanted to participate, you could sign up. If your club team wanted to participate, you know, you could sign up. And so that's one of the ways that we're looking to kind of add that for people who are interested as well.
Yeah, I think it's the type of opportunity that if we're going to continue to improve the game, we need to improve how we develop players, right? Like that's ultimately, you know, the game will only be as healthy as the next group of players that's going to play it at the highest level, right? And all the way down through. And I think it's a great tool to achieve that, right? And I think just thinking back like to myself as a high school athlete, you know, even if you look at like Skelly, you know, you talked about, there's no pass rush. Well, think how many things you do on a football field where it's not the exact game, right? Like no one would say, oh, and it's obvious, like no, university or Division I or whatever level of football it is, no coach worth his salt is going to watch like a drill and go, oh, I'm sure they can do that in a game, right? And I'm just going to totally disregard their 12-on-12 film or experience or whatever. But 90% or more of what we do in practice shouldn't be 12-on-12 full go to the ground football. Like if you're only going to, obviously you're going to evaluate the games, right? The kid can't play in the games, kid can't play in the games, whatever. But to me, like as a development tool, you look at it and say, okay, it's like anything. It's like a drill progression. It's like half line. It's like inside run. It's like one-on-ones. But it's more on the side of, scale the inside run, getting to team. So, when you talk about the ability to now double your reps in a season by saying, hey, we're going to have our skill position players do 7-on-7 at lunch on Wednesdays, right? Like, even if it's just that, and, like you said, you have 2 coaches that can make it out there. Or, for programs this summer, I think looking to have smaller cohorts because of rules around COVID, non-contact because of rules around COVID, and just trying to get more people back playing the game. I think